The first story of the day is about Julian Assange. There's a bunch of reports. I believe it started with the Washington Post and then New York Times followed Politico, all the mainstream media, and they reported possible charges for Julian Assange. If you don't know who Julian Assange is, he's the founder and the leader of WikiLeaks. He's been in the Ecuadorian embassy, I believe in the UK. It's the Ecuadorian embassy, but I believe it's in the UK. Correct me if I'm wrong. He's been pretty much hiding out there because he's been dodging, I don't know, I guess, charges that really were non-existent. First, they were saying he raped somebody in Sweden. The Swedish government was trying to charge him for rape, but actually the Swedish government dropped the charges of rape. So Julian Assange has been hiding out in an embassy for, I don't know, he doesn't really have any actual charges that they could find him on, but it seems like he's made a lot of governments around the world mad because what he does is he releases classified information via his news source. But here's the kicker, and why they can't charge him and haven't charged him yet is because he doesn't actually hack it or steal it himself. So it's not a crime to publish classified material. That's not a crime. If that was a crime, Washington Post and New York Times would go to jail. During the Trump administration, I believe multiple times they've published classified information and anonymous sources and things that they shouldn't have published. So what Julian Assange does is exactly the same thing as some of these mainstream media outlets, except the difference between him and the mainstream media is that WikiLeaks has an 100% accuracy rating. So they've never actually lied, whereas the New York Times, Washington Post, CNN have all had to retract stories and in some cases fire employees for getting completely false stories. With ABC, I believe they tanked the stock market with a fake story. So, fake news has real life consequences. They started wars that killed and displaced millions of people, destabilized parts of Africa, Middle East, and Europe, and United States, and Canada. Fake news has consequences. So WikiLeaks, whether you love them or hate them, you might not agree with the classified information they leak, but they don't ever make mistakes according to, their flawless track record. So it's very strange, and I do want to say on Julian Assange too is I don't know his personal record. It's debatable how good it is that he releases classified information and puts it out there. You could say it's not right, and maybe I'd agree with you on some extent, but here's what I'll say about Julian Assange personally. He had one of the best Twitter accounts in the world. He wasn't a huge fan of Trump. He really didn't like Hillary and people like that. But he gave really good perspective. So Julian Assange is like a very, very smart, honest person. I would argue that he was the smartest Trump critic. Like when he critiqued Trump, it actually made sense. And I love that about him because I didn't agree with him. But I was like, oh, okay, somebody who doesn't like Trump, who isn't a complete like brainwashed fool that just makes stuff up because they don't like Trump. So I enjoyed his Twitter thoroughly. I read a tweet recently that he was talking about male feminists. He had a good tweet about male feminists saying that they all almost like are desperate for women and that they're unliked among their peers. It was hilarious. It was funny coming from him because I feel like he's more liberal leaning. But anyway, Julian Assange, they took his internet away first at the Ecuadorian embassy. So once they had a new leader of Ecuador, all of a sudden a few months later, and he was supposed to be pro-Julian Assange, they took his internet connection away, which sucked because, Julian Assange had a great Twitter account. I loved it. I thought he was very, very, deep and intellectual. So then he loses his internet for weeks or months. It's been months now. Sorry, I lose track of time. I'm like, hey, we met last week, and people are like, I haven't seen you for 6 months. I'm like, oh, sorry, I lost track of time. Time flies. But Julian Assange has had no internet for months. He's had no people allowed to, I believe, visit him. One of his most famous visitors is Pam Anderson. Who knows what happened behind closed doors? Get it, Julian, but definitely wrap up. Never mind. But anyway, he hasn't been able to take visitors, and now they're saying that he's going to get charged. So my thoughts on it before I move on to the next story is, one, what is his charge? What is he getting charged for? I made a joke with a lot of truth behind it on Twitter saying, what's he getting charged for? Exposing corruption, exposing crime, never getting a fake story, having the best Twitter account, being smart. Like maybe being smart is a crime. Maybe you don't want to be smart in this world. It didn't work for Socrates, didn't work for Malcolm X, didn't work very well for Martin Luther King. In hindsight, it did. Everyone's like, oh, we love them. It's like, yeah, well then why did you kill them? Because when they were alive, people didn't like them as much, and now you celebrate them after you killed them. Doesn't make much sense to me. But anyway, Julian Assange, what he's doing is technically not illegal. It's what the mainstream media does, release classified material. And in the 2016 election, his crime was exposing crime. He exposed that they were cheating and rigging the election. It led to, people having to step down, I believe, because it revealed a lot of, inner corruption that we never would have known about. So it's very, very interesting. And I do want to say as well with Julian Assange, Trump on the campaign trail, maybe some people like him or don't like him here, let me know in the comments. Trump was like, I love WikiLeaks, I love WikiLeaks, I love WikiLeaks. He kept saying that because WikiLeaks was revealing a lot of corruption about the Clintons, and Podesta and whatnot. So he liked them during the campaign trail. I would love to see Trump, follow through on that, because I think Julian Assange is an asset. Whether you agree or disagree with his work, he's clearly a smart guy. He clearly knows a lot of stuff. He's somebody you want on your team, not, against you. And also, I don't think he's somebody that you want to kill or put in jail, because I think he's a special human being. But I do believe for Trump supporters, a lot of people are saying, well, he's being a hypocrite and he's not going to help Julian. We'll not know till we know, but here's the thing about what they're doing to Trump, and a lot of people aren't analyzing this properly. Or maybe they just have a different opinion, but this is mine. They put Trump in a rock, between a rock and a hard place, whatever that metaphor is, or you know what I'm saying. They said that Julian Assange is working with Russia. I don't personally think he's working with Russia, but that's what the news is saying. They've crafted the narrative that Julian Assange is like a Russian tool. So they've put Trump in a space where if he doesn't pardon Julian Assange, or he doesn't try to help Julian Assange, then he's a critic, he's a hypocrite. A lot of conservatives like Julian Assange. I would say most conservatives like Julian Assange. Most progressive, left-leaning Bernie Sanders type supporters, they love Julian Assange. So Julian Assange is incredibly popular on the left, incredibly popular on the right. I would say some conservatives don't like him, and some liberals, I would say the people who just like watch CNN and believe everything they hear, they don't like Julian Assange. But he's very popular. But if Trump pardons Assange, they're going to say he's working with Russia. If Trump doesn't do it, he's a hypocrite. This is what the mainstream media loves to do, folks. They love to craft the narrative to make you do what they already want you to do. With North Korea, they want Trump to start a war. They never wanted us to get along with North Korea, so they craft the narrative. If you fight with North Korea, that's bad. It's war. We're going to die. If you get along with North Korea, you're a dictator. You get along with only authoritarians. Putin is not one of their little EU, UN puppets, so it's like if you get along with Putin, you're a Russian puppet. If you fight Putin, that's good. They want you to start wars, so it's like you can't win. It's either you start a war or you go against their narrative. That's what they're doing to Trump with Julian Assange. So I would say do as you wish, but as someone who supports Trump, a lot of people are saying, oh, he's a deep state puppet. They make these things impossible. Everything that Trump does, if he steps there, it's wrong. If he hires Jeff Sessions, it's wrong. If he fires Jeff Sessions, it's wrong. If he does this, it's wrong. If he does this, it's wrong. They're trying to set Trump and, quite frankly, the United States up for failure. So I know what Trump's going through, because it's like if he really did pardon Julian Assange, they'd freak out, call him a Russian, and protest, march in the streets, and try to remove him from office as soon as possible, saying it's dangerous. I mean, the dude can't even breathe without him saying it's dangerous. So overall, personally, I would love to see Julian Assange get pardoned. I would love to see him get an internet connection. I would love to see him freed. Let him be his thing, but let me know your thoughts. I appreciate Julian Assange, and I don't agree with how they're treating him. But I'm open to, discussion about that. The next story is a creepy